afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're tuning in. Welcome to Cup of Cocoa and Chat. Whether you're driving, getting your workout in, running errands, or just cozying up with your favorite throw blanket, I am so glad you are here. I am Princess, your host, and this is a space where we sip, share, and move through life with intention, no matter where we are on our journey. Last week, we talked about fresh starts and fresh rhythms. This week, we're taking that conversation a step further as we explore the small changes that create lasting growth. Our theme for June 8th through June 14th is Small Steps, Big Impact. It's all about understanding that growth often comes from small choices made consistently. This week, we are focusing on the habits, mindset shifts, and daily decisions that quietly move us forward. Today is Monday, June 8th, and this is episode number 49 of Cup of Cocoa and Chat, the, the podcast. And I can hardly believe it, but we are just one episode away from our season 2 finale before our summer break. But don't worry, we will be back on July 6th with season 3 of Cup of Cocoa and Chat with bold and interesting topics. So look out. We are coming full force. All right. So today's episode is titled The Power of Small Changes. So growth doesn't always come from dramatic transformation, right? Often the most meaningful changes happen through small choices that we make consistently over time. Okay? Sometimes life is moving so fast that we don't even realize a change has happened because we're focused on the big moments, right? Yet many of the most impactful changes in our lives happen quietly, behind the scenes, when no one's watching, when there's no applause. You understand? They happen also through small adjustments, small decisions, and small actions repeated day after day. In many ways, I would say small changes are smoother and easier to manage than major life overhauls, really. They don't demand that we become a completely different person overnight. Instead, they invite us to grow one step at a time. One step at a time. Today's conversation will explore how the smallest habits shifts the smallest habits, the shifts in our thinking, and the intentional daily decisions can help move us forward, right? Our core talking points for today's episode are: number one, small changes are easily to sustain. Number two, tiny habits build confidence. Number 3, progress is better than perfection. Number 4, mindset shifts can change everything. Excuse me, everything. Number 5, small boundaries protect your peace. And last but not least, the compound effect of daily choices. So here's our question of the day. What is one small change you can make this week that your future self will thank you for? Take a moment to think about it, okay? Then let's talk about it and come up with an honest, practical answer together, right? As we move through this conversation, we should have our answer at the end, right? So, segment 1, let's start with our first talking point, which is small changes are easily to sustain. Okay? One of the biggest reasons people struggle to make changes in their lives is because they're trying to change everything at once. Everything at once, right? Now let's pause here for a moment. Have you ever said to yourself, starting Monday, I'm going to eat perfectly, exercise every day, drink a gallon of water, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., I'm going to save money, I'm going to clean the house, the entire house, right? And read a book every week, right? Tall order, right? And most of us have been there with those tall orders, right? The problem isn't that those are bad goals, though. That's not the problem. The problem is that we're trying to do too much too fast, right? And when we don't do it perfectly, we often get discouraged and quit altogether. But what if instead of trying to change everything, we focus on changing one thing? Just one thing, right? Maybe it's drinking one extra glass of water each day. Maybe it's taking a 10-minute walk around the neighborhood after dinner, right? Maybe it's reading one chapter of a book before bed, right? Or maybe it's going to bed just 30 minutes earlier so your morning doesn't feel rushed and stressful, right? Because those of you that have kids and your families to take care, you got all these things to do in the morning before everybody get out the house, right? And then you start running late. And then the stress sets in, right? So if we went to bed 30 minutes earlier that the night before, maybe that would cut down on some of that rushing and stress and everything that comes with running around like you. I remember the days running around like you the lost something, can't remember, go get in the car. Oh my God, I forgot that. You run back in the house, have one of the kids run back in the house. It's a time, right? It's a time. So those may seem like small things to start with, but small things add up, right? They add up. Because the truth is, consistency beats intensity. right? Anybody can do something for a day, right? Anybody can do something for a week. The challenge is doing it consistently. And that's where the change happens. See, I think sometimes we underestimate the power of repetition, right? We want immediate results. We want to see the transformation right away, right? Because we live in a microwave age. But most growth happens quietly, right? It's like planting a seed. Planting a seed, you don't put it in the ground today and expect a tree tomorrow, right? Because you got to water it. You got to give it sunlight, right? You have to care for it consistently. And then over time, growth begins to happen, right? The same is true for our lives. Anything worth having requires work. And if you want any of your changes to be successful, you have to be consistent, right? I'm going to say this again. Anything worth having requires work, right? Because better health requires work, right? Better finances requires work. Better relationships, you got it, requires work. Personal growth requires work, but not overwhelming work, not exhausting work, right? Just consistent work. And I think that's an important distinction. Because here's the thing, sometimes we hear the word work and think it has to be hard or miserable. Hard or miserable, right? But often the work is simply showing up, doing the small thing again and again and again and again, right? Even when you don't feel like it, even when nobody notices, even when the results aren't immediate. Because every small choice is building something, right? Every small choice is moving you closer to the person you're becoming. So let's reflect a little bit. Let me ask you this. What is one area of your life where you've been trying to make a huge leap when a small step might work better? Think about that. Maybe that's the place to start this week. Okay? Not with perfection, not with pressure, right? Just with one small change that you can sustain. Because small steps really do create big impact. So think about it. One area in your life where you've been trying to make a huge leap when actually a small step might work better. Okay? Now, once we start making those changes consistently, something interesting happens. Something interesting begins to happen, right? We start proving to ourselves that we can do hard things. And that's where our second talking point comes in, right? Let's move into our second talking point. Tiny habits build confidence, right? Because this is where we're gonna look at that big area where look at that big leap that we're trying to take and think about the smaller steps that could work better, right? Because tiny habits build confidence, and that's how we're gonna build our confidence, right? Because one thing I've learned over the years is that confidence doesn't just appear one day. It's built. It's actually built. And often it's built through the small promises we keep to ourselves. Think about it. Every time you tell yourself you're going to do something and then actually do it, you're building self trust. And guess what? Trust isn't a, is important because confidence is really a belief that you can depend on yourself. When you trust yourself, you stop questioning everything. You stop questioning every decision. When you trust yourself, you stop questioning every decision, right? Think about that. You stop waiting for someone else to validate your choices, just your choices. You don't need anybody to validate your choices. You start believing that you can handle whatever comes your way when you have trust in yourself and God, right? But that trust doesn't come from big accomplishments alone. It comes from the little things. You know, maybe you decided that every morning you're going to make your bed. Every morning you're going to make your bed, right? Simple, right? Some people make their beds, some do not. Some feel like that is the the start of their day, looking through that window, and that's how everything's going to line up. And then some people think I'm just going to get back in it later tonight, right? So why make it up, right? Some people some people just say, "What's the big deal about making a bed?" But the bed isn't the point. The point is that you started your day by keeping a promise to yourself. You said you were going to make your bed every day, and you make your bed every day. You've completed something. You've created a small win before breakfast, right? Or maybe it's writing in your journal. Taking a few minutes each day to put your thoughts on paper, right? To reflect, to process your thoughts, to check in with yourself. That's another promise you're keeping. If if writing in your journal is something that you want to do and you say to yourself that's what I want to do but you haven't done it yet, right? Or could it be just taking your medication on time if you take medication? Now, that that might not sound exciting to you, but it shows a commitment to your wellness. It says, I care enough about myself to take care of myself, right? It's also a form of self respect. Or here's another scenario. Maybe it's finally completing a task you've been avoiding. Like we do that a lot. I know I do. I know some of you may do it too. You say you're going to do it and you don't do it, right? Because we've all got one thing that we say that we're going to do and we don't do it. It could be a phone call, it could be that appointment, it could be that the drawer, the drawer that needs organizing. It could be that paperwork sitting on the counter that needs to be completed. And when you finally do it, you feel lighter because you've proven to yourself that you can move forward, right? And that's what confidence really is. It's evidence that you can trust yourself, that you can follow through, and that you are capable. And the beautiful thing about small habits is that they create momentum. One small win leads to another, right? You make your bed, then maybe you move to drinking more water. Um, then maybe you move to taking that walk, or maybe you make a healthier choice at lunch. But before you know it, those small actions begin stacking on top of one another. And suddenly, you're not just talking about change. Guess what? You're living it. You're living it. That's why I always say don't overlook the small wins. Celebrate them. Celebrate them. Acknowledge them. Because every small win is proof that you're growing. Every small win is proof that you're moving forward. And guess what? Every small win is building confidence for the next challenge ahead. So, what is one small promise you've kept to yourself recently? Maybe nobody else noticed, maybe nobody applauded, but you know you did it. What's one small promise you've kept to yourself recently? Guess what? It's worth celebrating. Celebrate it. Because small wins create momentum, and momentum creates change. You see how that works? All right, so once we start building confidence through the small wins, we often discover something else. And that is, we don't have to be perfect to make progress. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Segment 3. Progress is better than perfection. Progress is better than perfection. Now, this one right here might hit home for a lot of us, right? Because sometimes we spend so much time waiting for the perfect moment that we never get started at all. We never get started at all. We talk ourselves out of it because it wasn't time. It wasn't the right time. We didn't have the right amount of money. We didn't have the right car. We didn't have the right whatever, right? Because we're waiting for the perfect time. Okay. That perfect schedule, maybe. I don't know. The perfect level of confidence. Maybe, I guess, maybe, I don't know. Because we making excuses, right? We got to talking ourselves out of it. And while we're waiting, guess what? Life keeps moving. It keeps moving. I'm here to tell you something that I've learned over the years, though. The perfect time rarely comes. The perfect time rarely comes. There will there will almost always be something that isn't lined up exactly the way we want it. There will always be another reason to wait, another excuse, another obstacle, another I'll start next week, right? But my advice is simple: start where you are, one step at a time, slow and steady. And sometimes we spend months thinking about something, right? Months. We pray about it, we talk about it, we plan for it, we research it, we research it, we research it, and then somehow we keep putting it off. Not because we don't want it, not because we don't believe in it, but because we're waiting until we feel completely ready. The truth is, most growth happens before we feel ready. Think about some of the biggest moments in your life, right? I always say to my family when we plan for gatherings, sometimes those gatherings that we didn't even plan for are the best gatherings, right? Because we have so many perfectionists in my family that this has to be right. I has to be, the I has to be dotted, the T has to be crossed, and all of that. But some of the best gatherings that we had are things that we do spontaneously, right? Because you're never going to have all the answers. You're never going to be completely prepared, you know? Right? So, the biggest moments in your life, remember, you weren't completely prepared for that. Sometimes you are, but sometimes you're not. Sometimes you don't have all the answers. Did you know exactly how everything was going to turn out? Probably not. Yet somehow you found a way to move forward with it. And that's because courage isn't having all the answers. Courage is taking the next step anyway. And I think perfection can sometimes become a disguise for fear, right? Because we tell ourselves we're waiting for things to be better organized. We're waiting until we know more. But beneath all of that, we may simply be afraid to begin. And that's okay because fear is normal. But the important thing is to not let it keep you stuck right there. Because done is often better than perfect. So get it done. Don't worry about being perfect. Let me say that again. Done is often better than perfect. That workout doesn't have to be perfect. The budget doesn't. The business idea, the journal entry that you wrote down, none of that has to be perfect. Just take that first step. That's what needs to happen. Because progress gives you something perfection never can. Progress gives you movement, moves you along. It gives you experience. It teaches you a lesson. It definitely creates growth. And it usually keeps you, it keeps you moving. Because guess what? Perfection usually keeps you standing still, while progress has you moving. Okay? So if you've been waiting for the stars to align and all of that astrology mess, and the earth, the sun has to be here, whatever, right? Remember this: start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, take the first step, and then take the next one. Because small progress, repeated consistently, can completely change your life. I promise you. And I'd rather see you making imperfect progress than making perfect excuses. Right? So, what have you been putting off because you're waiting for the perfect time? And what would happen if you started this week instead? You know? It doesn't have to be perfect. And you won't have to do it all at once, because just enough, it just has to be enough to get you moving, right? Because progress will always take you further than perfection. Okay? So don't worry about the timing and all of the other stuff. Get it done, okay? So once we stop chasing perfection and start focusing on progress, something begins to shift, right? We start paying attention to the way we think and the stories we tell ourselves. And that's where our next talking point comes in, right? So let's move into our fourth talking point, which is small mindset shifts change everything, right? Now, when people think about change, they usually think about actions, right? You know, I got to exercise more. I got to eat healthier. I got to save money. I got to get organized, right? But before our actions can actually change, our thinking has to change first. Because the way we think influences the way we act. Come on, somebody. And sometimes the smallest shift in perspective can completely change our experience. Okay? Let me use myself as an example. Now, I've been transparent with all of you about starting my 4-week wellness reset, right? I was very transparent in May, like the last 2 weeks of May. I told you guys about my 4-week wellness start, right? Like many people, I have goals I wanted to reach, right? I wanted to take better care of myself, right? I'm getting older, right? It's never too late to start. I wanted to improve my health, right? Because I've been having a lot of flare ups lately, and I want to get away from that because it's so. I don't want to vent. That's not what we're here for, right? I just want to improve my health. I wanted to create healthier habits for myself. But I noticed something interesting, right? The way I was talking to myself mattered. At first, my mindset sounded like this: I have to eat healthier. I have I have to exercise. I have to take these medications. I have to make changes. I have to make changes. I have to, right? And if we're being honest, when we tell ourselves we have to do something, it can start to feel like a punishment. It can feel like pressure. Who wants that? It can feel like another obligation. So I had to, I, I had to. So I started changing my language. Basically, I started changing my language. Instead of saying I have to, I started saying I get to. I get to. I get to take care of my health. I get to make choices that support my future. I get to move my body, right? I get to create better habits. Now the situation hadn't changed, but guess what? Guess what? The task hadn't changed either, but my perspective changed, right? My perspective changed, and that changed my experience, right? I also found myself saying something else, right? I would look at my goals and think I'm behind, right? Have you ever done that? You compare yourself to where you think you should be, right? I don't compare myself to others. Now, that's one thing I do not do. Now, some people do, but I definitely don't do that. I don't compare myself to others, right? Because I'm me. But I would compare myself to where I think I should be, right? I compared myself to my younger self, right? Then and that girl gone. She gone. She's that older one, right? But suddenly it feels like I was losing a race nobody even asked me to run, right? All because of the way I was talking to myself. But then I started reminding myself, I'm not behind. I'm still growing. And there's a difference. Growing allows room for learning. It allows room for setbacks. It allows room for progress. Growing recognizes that the journey is still unfolding. And that small mindset shift made a big difference for me. So instead of focusing on how far I had to go, I started focusing on what I was doing today. I became more motivated. I started creating trackers because sometimes I forget. I started setting reminders, right? I started paying attention to the habits I wanted to build, right? And most importantly, I changed the way I was thinking, you know? One small habit at a time, one small choice at a time, right? One small mindset shift at a time. Because here's what I've learned: you can have the best plan in the world, you can have all the tools, you can have all the information. But if your mindset is working against you, everything feels harder. And I believe in working smarter and not harder. See, when your mindset begins working with you instead of against you, progress becomes possible. And that's why I want to encourage you to listen to the way you talk to yourself. Are you speaking from frustration? Could it be fear? Maybe pressure? Or are you speaking from grace, growth, and possibility? Because sometimes the change you need isn't a new plan, it's a new perspective. And a changed perspective can change your entire experience. Okay? So, what is one thought you've been repeating that no longer serves you? And what could you replace it with? Because that small shift might be the very thing that helps you move forward. Okay? Now, we start changing our habits, we shift in our mindset. We also begin to realize something else. Not everything deserves our time, energy, or attention. And that's where our next talking point comes in, right? Segment 5, small boundaries protect your peace. So let's move right into it. Small boundaries protect your peace. When people hear the word growth, they often think about doing more, right? You got to do more goals. We got to do more work. We got to do more commitments. We got to have more responsibilities. But not every single change is about doing more. Sometimes growth looks like doing less. Sometimes growth looks like saying no. Sometimes growth looks like limiting negativity or just staying away from the negativity, right? Sometimes growth looks like protecting your time, and sometimes growth looks like resting without feeling guilty. Okay, so one more time for being transparent. I'm going to be transparent one more time today because that's what we do here on Cup of Cocoa and Chat, right? Now, I love my grandchildren immensely. Anyone who knows me knows I would do just about anything for them, right? So, long story short, earlier this year, and I talked about it in one of the episodes, I briefly touched on it. Earlier this year, I found out that my grandson had been involved in an altercation on public transportation, while he was coming home from school, right? Thankfully, prayerfully, he was okay. But it opened my eyes, right? As grandparents, we worry. As parents, we worry. Aunts, godparents, uncles, right? As a guardian, we worry, right? That's just what we do, you know? Or as family members, right? It could be a cousin. We want our loved ones to be safe, regardless of who we are to them. We want them to be safe, right? So after having a conversation with him, I made what I call an executive decision. I decided that I would help make sure he got home safely. Originally, the plan was his maternal grandfather and I were going to rotate school pickups, right? But the responsibility gradually became mine. Now, honestly, I don't mind. I don't mind. Those of you that know me know I love my grandchildren. So I'll do anything for them. I don't mind, right? Because the one thing, his safety mattered to me, right? But while picking him up, after a while, I began noticing something. There were days when I would be waiting, and he would be still standing outside, spending time with his friends, right? Now, many of you that follow me on social media, you know that that's how Princess Nana and Mook Chronicles were born. Because the crazy things he say out of his mouth, or the crazy things he does, right? Okay? There were times when I would learn about an early dismissal at the last minute. Like they get out at 12:15 and I find out at 11:45, right? I'm not even dressed. Like, who does that? My grandchildren and maybe a lot of other grandchildren or children. I don't know. You know, when he was in middle school, I was on that the list, the school list, where they would call me for inclement weather or, early dismissals. I would get those calls or whatever. Not necessarily the emails, but I would get the calls. Um, you know, but I realized something important after all of that. Like, wait a minute, what is going on here? Just because I was willing to help didn't mean my time wasn't valuable, right? My time is valuable. Just because I'm retired and they think I play on social media all day, still my time is valuable, right? So just because I loved him didn't mean I couldn't have boundaries. I had to set the boundaries. I had to. And I think many of us struggle with that, especially those of us who are caregivers, parents, grandparents, guardians, people who are always helping others. We convince ourselves that setting boundaries means we care less. But that's not true. It's far from the truth. Healthy boundaries don't mean you love people less. Healthy boundaries mean you respect yourself too. So I had to make some changes, of course. I established some expectations, and if I receive notice too late, another transportation option has to be arranged, right? Because before I started picking him up after the incident, his mom was, if his grandfather couldn't get him, his mom would pay for a ride share, right? So I was actually saving her money because she never even told me about the incident. But that's a whole nother story, right? So, you know, if you guys can't tell me the night before or the morning of, so I have time to prepare, then some of arrangement has to be made, right? If I'm not feeling well, I had to tell myself it's okay for someone else to step in because I'm not feeling good. Like when I get those flare ups, I'm in pain from head to toe. So I'm definitely not getting outside, getting in the car. Something could happen to me, right? Mm-mm. I had to set a boundary, right? If I'm tired, it's okay for me to rest because my time matters too, my health matters too, my peace matters. And here's the lesson I want to share. Protecting your peace doesn't always require dramatic life change. Sometimes it can start with just one conversation, one limit, one expectation, one boundary. And the beautiful thing is that boundaries often improve relationships. People know what to expect. They know what to people know what to expect from you, and you know what to expect. Less resentment, less frustration, less stress, and more peace, which is very important, right? You have to show people how to treat you because otherwise they won't treat you the way you need to be treated. Okay? So for a long time, many of us weren't taught that being available all the time that we were taught that being available was a sign of love. That is not true. But I've learned that consistently and constantly saying yes to everyone else can sometimes mean saying no to myself. And eventually that catches up with you. When you're constantly saying yes yes, yes, and available all the time, it catches up to you. It does. So peace often grows through small boundaries, right? You don't have to put up any walls. It doesn't have to be punishment, not distance, just boundaries. That's it. And simple, healthy limits that allow you to continue showing up for people you love without losing yourself in the process. Just simple. Let me ask you this. Is there any area in your life where you need a small boundary? If so, set it. Get it over with. Do it. It doesn't mean you don't love anyone any less. Okay? Because maybe it's your time, it could be your energy, your finances, it could be your resting habits. You're not resting because you're doing everything for everybody else. Can't keep your finances together because you're shelling out money to everybody else, right? You can care about others and still protect your peace. Those two things can exist together. And sometimes one small boundary can create a whole lot of peace. Okay? So, we've talked about small habits, we've talked about confidence, progress, mindset shifts, and boundaries. Let's bring it all together with our final talking point, which is the compound effect of daily choices. Because every small choice we make today is helping create the life will the life will that we will live tomorrow. That was a mouthful. Okay, compound effect of daily choices. So if you listen to this episode from the beginning, you've probably noticed a pattern. We talked about small changes, small habits, small mindset shifts, small boundaries. And now we're talking about the results those small things can create over time. Because here's the truth, the little effort repeated consistently creates big results. Not overnight, not in a week, but over time. And that's the compound effect. It's the idea that small actions, when repeated day after day, begin to build on each other. At first, you may not notice much of a difference. Then one day you look up and realize how far you've come. I'll use myself again as an example. As I talked about earlier, you know, recently starting a 4 week wellness reset. Now, I didn't wake up one morning and completely change everything about my life. I started small. I began paying attention to my choices. I started prepping meals and snacks. My grocery list has changed over time. I'm drinking more water and fewer sugary drinks. I've become more intentional about what I'm putting into my body. And little by little, those choices have started producing results. I've already lost a few pounds. Yay for me. Let's clap it up. Small win. Celebrate it, right? You know, but not because I did something extreme or found a magic solution. I just started making better choices consistently. And that's what I want people to understand. Big results often begin with small decisions. Maybe your goal isn't health related like mine. Maybe your small change is saving $5 a day. I don't know. $5 may not seem like much, but over time it adds up. Maybe your goal is to take a walk every day after dinner or in the morning before you go to work. Maybe it's reading 10 pages of a book each day. I don't know. Maybe it's spending more quality time with your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, your friends. Maybe it's praying a little longer. It could also be spending less time scrolling on the internet, and do more living. Live your life, right? Whatever it is, don't underestimate it because the life you're building tomorrow is often being shaped by the choices you're making today. So, the challenge is that we live in a world that loves instant results. We want quick fixes, fast answers, immediate success. But most meaningful growth doesn't work that way, right? Real growth is usually slow. It's quiet, it's happening behind the scenes. And because it's happening gradually, we sometimes don't recognize it. But that doesn't mean it isn't working, right? Because every choice, every healthy choice, every dollar saved, every page read, every walk matters, prayer matters, boundary matters, every small promise you keep to yourself matters because those choices are building something and they are shaping your future one decision at a time, one habit at a time, one day at a time. And that's the power of the compound effect. And that's really what the entire episode has been about. Not dramatic transformations, not overnight success, but the power of small changes repeated consistently. So, as we close today's conversation, I want to leave you with this. And it just goes right back to our question of the day, right? What is one small change you can make this week that your future self will thank you for? Don't overthink it. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't try to change everything at once. Just choose one thing, one step, one intentional choice, and then keep showing up for it. Because small choices become habits, habits become routines, routines become lifestyles, and lifestyles become our future. So remember, small steps really do create big impact. And thank you for spending a little time with me today. If this episode encouraged you, inspired you, or gave you something to think about, be sure to share it with a friend. Until next time, keep moving forward one small step at a time. Peace and blessings. I love you guys, and I mean it. Cocoa and shine. So let's reset. Falls like a cold. So let's reset, recharge, and reconnect right here on